and player health, player injuries, fitness are all part of that. And I think we'd be cramming too much into it. And I think that was one of the things that scuppered the ESL approach. One of the things that was missed, I felt, with the ESL rules would have been the salary cap. And, one of the reasons why football clubs have suffered is that players' wages as a percentage of revenue have gone through the roof. Most service businesses, once you get beyond 60%, 65%, 70%, you start to get in financial trouble. And obviously COVID, had a very debilitating effect. But that was one of the things I was surprised actually that people didn't focus more on it. It was an attempt, I guess, to create an NFL type structure in Europe. As a fan, I would love to see a European league. That doesn't mean I want to see the Premier League suffer. But coming back to what should the head of UEFA do, I think FIFA and UEFA have to cooperate, dare I say it, even more effectively or more effectively. We have to have a lot of what goes on, I think, is because of the two different jurisdictions. And it's not just a European jurisdiction and a global one. It's obviously with South America and Asia as well. So unifying it more and coming up with a common approach, which I think was also at the heart of some of the problems around the ESL. The other thing is, who owns the club? Do the fans own the club, or do the owners own the club? And Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, made a political issue out of it here. The fascinating thing was when the CEO of Manchester United met with the Prime Minister, what was it, about 2 weeks before the ESL? I'm being mischievous here. Is it possible that he didn't mention the ESL, of which Manchester United was one of the clubs? They say no, but I find it very difficult. And then, of course, the Prime Minister came out and said politically it's really important. I think I'm right in saying, Richard, there is an inquiry going on at the moment about what the structure should be. There's going to be a government report, or government sponsored or propagated report about ownership of the club. And there was that wonderful thing about Chelsea having sold bits of their pitch to fans, and if Chelsea did participate, could they play on that pitch or would they have to use another one? So a lot of things to be sorted out, but I think conceptually, I like the idea. From a commercial point of view, I think it would be huge. And I think, a European league would bring in sponsorship. One of the things, on our agenda was to talk about is sponsorship dominated by alcohol and betting. I think we do want to broaden it. That doesn't mean that those categories don't benefit from it, properly executed. But I do think bringing in the tech companies, and we've seen that with Alibaba and the Olympics. And in fact, actually the IOC, I think, has been very good at developing top sponsorship generally, but specifically in relation to tech too. And that's terribly important, when you get into ticketing issues and organization. So I think encouraging tech, we've discussed this before, Amazon, Facebook, Apple, Google, Microsoft, all of them, I think Salesforce, Oracle, Adobe, all of these companies, well, we've seen it with the Chinese companies in particular, Alibaba, Tencent, and TikTok, all of these companies will be important sources of sponsorship and rights development in the coming years.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting watching in a media rights space where the platforms have dabbled and shown interest, and in some cases, like Amazon with the tennis recently, they played a few cards, but they haven't gone all the way in. Whereas TikTok came along and did a sponsorship with UEFA and got loads of coverage and did a great job. It was a really good partnership.
Yeah, and I think well, that shows you the power of the social media or the new media in the new context. If you go digital first, then it was a bit ironic sitting there watching. I could have watched the tennis on Amazon Prime or on Channel 4. I started on Amazon Prime and switched, and Channel 4 looked like a wonderful piece of advertising. For I don't know how long the game lasts. What, 2 hours, 2.5 hours? It was full on. I mean, Amazon Prime was on the screen all the time on Channel 4.
Yeah, a good and they did a very good job of making it look like they were being altruistic as well.
It was very good. Excellent.
All right, so we've only got a handful of minutes left, but the sort of note that's around a lot of people are getting very excited about and investing in at the moment is, and most broadly, I'm going to call it the metaverse. And you might wrap into that NFTs, but also VR and augmented and immersive. And, I have a side project called Rematch, as an immersive experience company, because I feel excited about it. And I want to be part of it. And fans from sport, they want to be in the thing. But, are you bullish about it, or is it bullshit?
I'm prejudiced a little bit because we're working on it. And, I'm very bullish on it. I'm very bullish on it. The Epic technology, the gaming technology, the Fortnite, the Unreal Engine. We built a studio in Mumbai. Sorry, not in Mumbai, from New Delhi, exclusively to create high quality content in New Delhi for dispatch around the world. It was the old CNBC TV18 studio, and we've made that into a base for the Unreal Engine. This is technology that enables us to create content from anywhere in the world. So it's really exciting. We've done this NBA virtual reality streaming through Verizon during COVID last season. I think we did 16 games. I think we're doing a larger number of games. I think it's 26 games or maybe more this year. So the answer is I'm extremely excited by that. That uses the Oculus headsets and technology. I'm very excited about that. And I think that is going to be huge. And the linkage between the gaming industry and the sports industry could be phenomenally powerful. And that, the simple fact is, again, talking to my colleagues, that Gen Z connects and communicates and socializes in a number of ways. Fortnite gaming technology would be an example of it. Animal Crossing would be another example of it. I mean, there's plenty of ways that you can do it. So I think this is really important, Richard, and a really important opportunity for the sports ecosystem to develop extremely effectively. I think the NBA, I was asking my colleagues, who do we think is probably the most innovative group? And we think with the NBA, the NFL is super good. But the NFL at the center has lesser budgets, as best as we can figure out, and a lot of the work is done by the clubs, by the franchises, by the Patriots or the Panthers. And somebody Nora mentioned to me that she saw some really interesting work being done by the Carolina Panthers. Panther, augmented reality panther leaping out at you in the screen, and all. It was quite. So the answer is yes. I mean, the metaverse, as Zuckerberg would call it, plus augmented reality, virtual reality, AI, voice, all these things are going to make the sporting experience, I think, more immersive, more connected, and very powerful, and actually will help sports generally. I mean, we focused on soccer and touched on basketball and American football, but a lot of the sports that a lot of our clients like, a lot of our clients, is an important point, I think, go off piste, if I can put it that way. They don't go for the big sports because some people say the Premier League is overpriced. When you look at the Premier League versus the French League or the Bundesliga or whatever, or La Liga, I mean, you could argue that there is some scope for sort of leveling up. But beyond that, the smaller sports, the more specialist sports. I was speaking to one of our fan clients, and the CMO said, we're not going to go for the big the big checks. We're going to go for special, and in the sustainability area, in the gender area, the diversity area, the equity area. Some of those things can have very strong ROIs, both quantitatively and qualitatively. So I think all these technologies are really good for sport and will lift up the other sports. I mean, the Olympics, I think, was really good this year because we saw a number of sports there that were there for the first time. We're even going to see cricket at the Olympics, I think, at some point in time, and maybe a T20 variety of cricket, because I'm sure that's going to come. But I think it'll be more broadly spread, and I think that's to the benefit. So those technologies will help.
I'm glad to see that you're a technologist at heart. I had no idea that you were such a...
At heart, maybe not in my head, but certainly in my heart. So I have to be, because our livelihood depends on us assessing where the technologies are going. We're not wedded to one technology as opposed to another, or platform or hardware or software company, but we look at it in the round. And I think the rise of TikTok, I mean, since we last spoke, the rise of TikTok that is the one platform that has invaded the big five. I mean, the Google, Facebook, Amazon, Tencent, Alibaba. You'd add a sixth and talk about the big six platforms would be TikTok. Kalshu is there. Twitter, obviously, 4.5 billion of revenue. Snap, 4.5 billion of revenue this year. Obviously, their Snap is growing like a weed. But when you look at it relative size, Google's out there at 180 billion last year to 220 this year of ad revenues. Facebook is 80 to 115, 120 this year, and Amazon is 25 to 35, and then TikTok, as best as we can find out, last year was about 32 billion in ad revenues. So those are the dominant. Gives you an idea of the scale. The dominant platforms, and that has not been broken into other than by TikTok so far. Yeah. So there's plenty.
And when you look at that growth curve, I think TikTok was 2 years ago, it was like 9 billion. I mean, and it's up to mid 30s. It's on the rise. Yeah.
Right. And I think one of the things that rights owners and should really think about is, if you just take this year alone, the media market is probably worth about $650 billion this year, about half in America and half outside. And of that 650, for the first time last year, digital crossed 50%. This year, probably 55 to 60. But into Google, Facebook, and Amazon alone this year, an incremental 100 billion will go. So most of that will go into 10 billion, as I said, into Amazon, but the bulk of it will go into Google and Facebook being not just Facebook, but Instagram, obviously. They are key. And anybody who has sports rights, that's why I think the women's thing that we talked about is quite interesting, because you have almost a clean sheet of paper, and it enables you to, and because of the closer connection maybe between fans and players, it enables you. And COVID, one other point that came up in our discussion with my colleagues, COVID really has stimulated the speed, or has sped up, because players have started to communicate much more with their fans, and players obviously as a result, it's been good for them. I mean, you look at when that transfer was made from Juventus to Man United, look at the sales of the jerseys. I can't remember how much it was, but it was huge. So I do think the players, have tremendous influence through the social media. We've seen that. The other thing over the top, we haven't talked about that. I mean, the impact that OTT has had on F1. If you talk to anybody in F1 about the Netflix series that are around the various teams and around the sport, that has had a huge impact on developing fan engagement and fan connection. So there's so much in the new technology, that whether it be metaverse or virtual reality or OTT, that everybody can play with.
Yeah, yeah. There's some keynotes in there, aren't there? Being fleet of foot, having digital front and center so that you can transform and adjust like the NBA does. There's understanding your rights relationship, particularly with your athletes. I think, as you say, when that player power is growing as a rights holder. And then there's also things like, we quite often advise people that you just need credible threat, right? In your rights negotiations, you have to be able to put on a decent show when it comes to OTT services or audience engagement. But fundamentally, it all comes down to that relationship. You've got to have and sport does have it. Sport has the relationship with the audience, just needs to be able to look after that and care for it, as well as grow it and commercialize it.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to speculate, on F1, if Bernie Ecclestone was still running F1, whether he would, there were those restrictions on social media with drivers.
That's right.
There were, I think if Netflix wanted to do a film, they would have probably been charged a fortune to do so. On the other hand, Bernie ran F1. I saw it at the first hand extremely well and extremely profitably. But I think even he would acknowledge that there was some short-termism there, and some of the things that we've seen happen in Formula One, and I think Formula One is in very good health, as best as I can see at the moment. It's become more competitive, and I think it's good in good nick.
I feel like we should end on a football note. You've got some fandom in there, some level of fandom in there. You must at some stage have been approached or been tempted. Have you never been tempted to become a club owner?
No, I always. Well, you see, I think it's really the ESL thing really threw into relief. In America, the franchises, Bob Kraft, in 1985 or when it was, his then wife, I think he agreed with his then wife that he was going to bid, I don't know, call it $120 million. And she was, I think, she was basically his business partner. And he tells the story, we agreed that the price would be 150, let's say. And he goes to the auction and he comes back somewhat shamefacedly and said, I bid 180. And of course, now it's worth whatever it is, 3 billion, 4 billion, whatever the hell it is. But they run them brilliantly. I mean, I think Bob Kraft still is, and we'll see what he does with soccer in the World Cup, because he has the Boston franchise there, or the England franchise. And he does it brilliantly in terms of stadium design and fan engagement and the like. But, you can't do that. And you saw that with the ESL. I mean, do the Glazers really own the club, or do the fans own the club? And when you get political intervention, which I think we did get, because the Prime Minister saw his main chance as, stimulating, winning a few votes because he's on the fan side, makes it quite difficult. So that's one thing. I focus on our business, and so I tend to try and focus. I have a great admiration for people like Musk and Bezos, who can build Amazon and Tesla and send people into space at the same time. That to my mind is incredible, that you can marshal your resources, personal and business, in that way. So the answer is no, I haven't. And I don't think I would. I mean, my favorite sport is cricket. So would I? I don't think I could.
Yeah, no, indeed. You might back a 100 team, and then in that case,
IPL team. I could have an IPL team, I guess. But no, I haven't contemplated it. I mean, I did get invited at one stage to get involved in football, but I really focus on. Well, it used to be Sarches, then it was S4, with WPP, now it's S4, so I focus on them.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time.
Do not wish to be diverted, Richard.
Stay focused, absolutely. I definitely won't be buying any clubs, that's for sure, for many reasons.
Anybody who's watching, if there is anybody out there watching who wants to discuss anything further, Martin at s4capital.com. So happy to do that.
Tremendous. Thank you very much. And thank you to everybody in Madrid.
Right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
God bless. See you soon. Ciao. Bye.